Welcome to Faking It, a podcast where I will interview friends, family, and a bunch of strangers along the way who have stellar life experiences and stories to share. I'm your host, Liz Hodgson. I'm a filmmaker, photographer, personal support worker, writer, and a whole bunch of other things, and now a podcaster. This podcast is called Faking It, and that's because I feel like that's what we're all doing, faking it till we figure it out, till we make it. Because nobody really has a damn clue what they're doing. Life changed a lot for me when I realized that. So that's where this all begins. For this, our very first episode, I'll be interviewing one of the most important and influential people in my life. And that's my mom, Joanne Hodgson. In this episode, we're going to go over bariatric weight loss surgery, mental health, and getting by. Stick around. I've got a lot of great things in store for those of you who feel like getting loyal. Here we go.
Hi,
Joanne.
there, Liz.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, that's good. So I just want to start by asking you if you could tell me what bariatric surgery is.
Well, bariatric surgery is, there's different types of bariatric surgery, but the one I had is called a Roux-en-Y bypass. And what happens is your stomach is basically made into the size of a tennis ball, and your small intestine is detached and reattached to your pouch, which is now your new stomach. So there's about 3 or 4 inches of your small intestine that is removed and reattached to a pouch. So therefore your stomach is what they call bypassed into this small pouch that may expand just a little bit after surgery and should stay that size for the rest of your life.
Oh, wow. Okay. So when did you undergo this surgery?
I had the surgery done approximately 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it was in April, and I had to go through a year of testing and classes and pre-qualification to have the surgery done in a Toronto hospital through the hospitalization program in Ontario.
So was all the prerequisites was that so that it would be covered by OHIP?
Absolutely. You had to qualify, go to several classes about nutrition, talk to psychiatrists, psychologists. You had to do physical tests to make sure that your body was in good enough shape to go through the surgery. And you had to bring your family to courses as well, so they would know what you were going to go through. So there was a lot of pre-counseling. And then after you went through all those steps, you had to get qualified by a board on the bariatric surgery. I guess it's a board of different doctors and nurses that decide if you are ready for the surgery.
Right, because it's a lot of money and time and resources, so they want to make sure.
Right, and at the same time, you have to sign up for a 5-year follow-up program so they can test you, do psychological evaluations, and see how you're doing to ensure that you don't return to your old eating habits.
Okay, and what was the reason why you decided to undergo the surgery?
Well, I've been overweight most of my life, and I had tried every type of diet imaginable. I have a long family history as well of my parents both being overweight, and my mother's mother was very overweight, and I was never taught the right eating habits. So by the time I was 50, I was very, very overweight, and I was having a lot of health problems. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and I was diabetic.
What kind of diabetes did you have?
It was type 2 diabetes, and I ended up with it when I was in my late 40s, as did my mother, and it was controlled through metformin pills. I was not on insulin yet, but if I had gained any more weight, I would have been insulin dependent.
Okay, and so since the surgery, we'll get into the how numbers and everything, but since the surgery, how many ailments or medications and things are you now not on?
Okay, well, I have stopped taking 5 different types of meds, and my sleep apnea has gone away. So
What's like just a bit for people who may not know what's sleep apnea?
sleep apnea is because of being overweight. My when I slept at night, I stopped breathing between 20 and 40 times throughout an evening, like throughout a sleep period of 7 to 8 hours. I would stop breathing, and it creates sleep apnea, which means that the next day you're not as aware, you're having more health problems because your body's not getting the proper amount of sleep each night. So sleep apnea was at the point where I had to treat it with a machine. It's called a CPAP machine, and I have since stopped using it since I've lost the weight. I also stopped taking high blood pressure pills, high cholesterol pills. I stopped taking the metformin as the diabetes went into remission. And I also stopped taking Nexium, which is for GERD, which is I was having problems with my esophagus.
Right.
And also, I stopped taking anti-inflammatories for different parts of my body because of the weight.
Right. And you had also had a knee replacement?
I had double knee replacements done, I think, 3 years before the surgery. I had one done, I think, in 2011, and then I had another one done a few years later.
Yeah. And when you were overweight, how did it feel to be somebody who was overweight, especially with just a little background? You were a very athletic person. You were on a basketball team for most of your teenage years. And even like I even remember as a kid, you being on a basketball team, baseball. So how was it to be, slowly but surely it gets like maybe you're more enough overweight that you don't feel comfortable playing those sports? Like, what was it like to sort of be a naturally athletic person, but then feel like you can't?
It was a catch-22 because as I started doing a lot of sports after school, it started getting my knees. It started getting to my knees. So I stopped playing basketball because my knees were getting in such bad shape. And then I started gaining weight because I wasn't exercising at the level I should have exercised at.
Right.
So then it was a catch-22. If I started playing baseball, and after each game I was in such pain with my knees that I would stop doing baseball. So I got to the point where my knees were in terrible shape, and I had to go to a specialist, and they refused at the beginning to do anything because of my age. They said
Because you're
that
young, you were young for a knee
yes,
replacement.
for
yeah.
knee replacement.
Usually
and
it's
at
like
that
people
time,
who are 70 or
right. Usually the knee replacement at that point was being done in the 70s. And
age
I was
range,
still
age range.
age range, 70s to 75. Yet I was in my early 50s and or late 40s, and they wouldn't do the knee replacement. So I just, definitely was getting also emotionally depressed and upset because I wasn't, getting the same sort of equilibrium I would get from playing sports and being physically active. So I finally got a surgeon that would do my knees because he realized that there were a lot of things
It's like a
that
key
were,
part of
yeah,
maybe even helping you exercise.
right, exactly. And I got the two knee replacements done, but unfortunately, once the knee replacements were done, I got into a lifestyle of not doing as much, and I
It
was
became
starting
harder.
to get back, but I was dieting, and it wasn't taking off the weight
Just
that
quick
it should have.
fixes and then it
Yeah.
all comes back.
Yeah, I was losing weight. I would lose the weight, and then I'd at one point I was even taking diet pills, and I lost 50 pounds. And as soon as I stopped taking the diet pills, I just went right back to my habits. So I
Right.
wasn't changing my emotional dependence on food, and I was just kind of doing the yo-yo thing, back and
Yeah.
forth, back and
And what
forth.
was, if you could, like, what was your emotional relationship with food?
Well, food really just filled the void when I was upset or stressed. I would definitely overeat. So I would sit down with a bag of chips and I would eat the whole bag in like 20
And it's
minutes.
an awkward thing too, I think, because a lot of our relationships with food, people who enjoy to cook or whatever, like it can be a sad thing, a happy thing.
Right.
Not like, so it almost is like every single thing.
Like you can't,
And it's the most acceptable like addiction if you
Right.
think about it. Like it's
It
not
was.
acceptable, but it's not that you have to go to a street corner or an alleyway to get, a bag of chips.
Right. Or buy
It's
booze.
very accessible, or buy booze
You didn't
or
have to
drugs.
you could not go into the liquor store, but every day I had to cook meals for my family.
Right.
I had to make lunches for my family. You can't ignore food commercials. You can't ignore food all over,
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And they're targeting you
Right.
to eat, and they're professional advertising people
Right.
who are paid to try to make people want their product.
Exactly. And the food I was more addicted to than anything was stuff with salt. I wasn't so much
So that would high blood pressure as well,
exactly.
Your sodium intake and
right on
cholesterol and
it
all
just
that.
added and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and I started losing respect for myself. I was down on myself because I was so overweight. I just couldn't, there were things I just couldn't do, like simple things like go up the stairs without getting out of breath, bending down and picking things up.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that though, because even thinking back, like it is a bit of an odd experience for me to think of you as as a child, I thought of you as a certain weight, which is sort of more close, like you're thinner than I think ever through my life, but it was an odd experience to see, like as a young child, see you at a certain weight and then see you throughout, and then almost see you go back to the weight-ish sort of that you were around when I was a kid. So it was this weird like shift of double take in the beginning of like, is that, oh yeah, that's what mom looks like now.
Right.
But even though you were larger through some of those years, I never, like, I think I've talked to, friends and colleagues and stuff, just being like, I never remember my mom being like, no, I can't do that because I can't go up the stairs. Or I think that maybe you silently did this all, or like felt a certain way, because it was never that mom said, oh, I won't go here, or I won't do this. It's only afterwards that I'd hear you say like, it was uncomfortable to sit in concert seats, or an airplane was a pain in the ass. Like, I was self-conscious about doing this or that. And you were just really good at hiding it, or I didn't pick up on it. But I never felt that you were like, wouldn't do something. Like you'd still want to go shoot hoops, or you'd still want to, coach my basketball team, which I bet probably took a lot of, or you came to like help out with like drills and stuff.
Right.
And I bet that took a lot of bravery to like sort of say, I know that I'm not in shape, but I'm going to come and do this because I know this sport. And like, that's what you're so inherently like a physical person, but you're almost trapped a little bit.
Totally trapped.
Yeah.
And
but then
you didn't
feel
see the depression
that
I didn't. You hide and you kind of pretend it's not there because you don't want to be negative, and you want to, be as positive of a example to your daughters as you can.
Right.
But you don't want to make it, it's a tough thing. It's a catch-22, like I said.
Slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. And, the decision to have the surgery done, it was a big step because I knew my life would change.
Did you really know though? Like, did you really grasp at the time of making that choice?
Yes, I knew that I would never be able to sit down again to a Christmas meal and really enjoy it.
Oh.
I knew from the classes, and what I was told was that it was very, very unlikely with this type of surgery you could overeat. And if you did, you would be vomiting and you would suffer for it.
And what's there's another thing called dumping syndrome.
Yes,
what's that?
That's what it is. Is if you overeat or you eat too fast
after the surgery.
And and this kind of happened more the first couple of years. It doesn't happen a lot this time. Sometimes I eat too fast, but I can manage it. I know how to deal with it.
Right.
Like get up and walk around or have some milk to drink, which you don't normally drink and eat at the same time when you have the bypass surgery. You drink much, much later after your meal. So, so I kind of knew that my life would change, and they also, through the therapy and the discussion, told us that our relationship with food was going to change drastically to almost the point where at the beginning, and I admit this, I hated food. I hated having to eat.
Yeah.
because I had to put the right amount of protein in my body. I had to put the right amount of vitamins in my body because I didn't want to become deficient and end up with more illness because my intake was not proper.
Right.
So you had to kind of have these different levels of intake that you almost go from being on a diet to being on a life diet. And you had to get your head around it, that it's not a diet, it's a way of life.
Yeah,
now.
which is a strange concept, not even just of the nutritional part of it, but I think a strange concept of, like, I don't think many people think about how they eat. Not like what, but like chewing a certain amount of times. Because I remember you said you had to chew a certain amount of times.
Yes, I still do.
Yeah, so of course. So chewing a certain amount, the speed at which, I mean, I think some people may eat fast and go, oh, it might feel it later, but I don't think I think we just do it. It's sort of just like how we've always felt like we've walked and we've, been able to, do certain things since young life.
Right.
It's not really something you think about. So you're sort of reprogramming
Exactly.
a very bizarre thing to reprogram.
You take
like breathing. It'd be like reprogramming yourself
Right.
breathing.
Exactly. And you've, like, till I was 50, whatever, I ate this way. And now for the last 4 years, I've had to eat a totally different way. And there have been times I've overeaten and I've suffered for it. And there have been times where I've undereaten and I got very, very thin there for a while, that my body was almost starving itself. And I realized I was going a little overboard, because you have to find that happy medium. You have to find that right mix.
Yeah, well, it's drastic in itself, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
I think it's probably, is it expected that somebody might go a little too far and then sort of balance out
Yes.
and find their, like not happy medium, but like a
Well, in our group therapy,
place.
like I did the group therapy sessions for about 2 years afterwards.
So it's like everybody going through your journey. And
right. And there were people at different stages of their surgery, their surgery journey. So there were people from my class, there were people that had been a year, 2 years, 3 years. So you kind of saw a completely different mindset. And to tell you the truth, at the beginning, I did stop going. At the beginning, I just found that I thought people were doing a lot of whining, because a lot of people got angry, feeling that, well, they were going to be on a diet for the rest of their life, and they thought this surgery was the magic bullet. Nothing's the magic bullet. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that these people just really need to reprogram their brains.
But they wanted a quick fix and not to
Right.
think about it ever again.
Exactly.
Which is not what this is about.
No, it's not. It's about being hyper aware of what you are putting into your mouth and putting into your body, and how much you chew and how much you are consuming, and how food is fuel.
Right, yeah.
Food is fuel. And that's the key thing you have to keep telling yourself. And yeah, sometimes you fall into your bad habits. There's some days that I will eat just sweet stuff, but I'm aware of that. Mm-hmm. And the next day I sit myself down and go, okay, you need to put your protein back. You've got to have this today. You've got to have that today. So you have to plan a lot more than you just come home and eat what's in the fridge. You have to plan, like, even though we plan meals, remember I do menus.
Always, yeah.
And I always plan menus, and then my grocery list. I almost have to plan more, because I plan for what my husband's going to eat now, and I have to plan for what I'm going to eat. And a lot of the times it's different things.
Yeah. So I remember also you telling me about certain people, like I think that there's certain people who probably would succeed in this and certain people that wouldn't. For example, in the group meetings, you'd come home sometimes and tell me about this certain person who would be like, well, why can't I have carbonated beverages? Right. Like, that's something you can't have ever again. No. You can't have beer. You can't have pop. You can't have anything. And you can't drink through a straw. No. Which is something I don't think people know about, which is odd. So touch on that a little bit after. But like, I remember you saying, yeah, that person, was just set on, well, ginger ale helps me calm my stomach. And no matter how many times or who explained it or what person would tell her what she'd read, she couldn't get it through her head. So I wonder, do you think as well that only certain people sort of succeed in this, which is obviously true, but wasn't she somebody who had already had the surgery?
Yes.
So what happens to someone like that?
Well, what happens is there were people who only lost a little bit of weight. They didn't lose the 100 and something odd pounds that you usually do.
But it's an irreversible surgery. This one's
Totally.
different than I'd say more cosmetic where people
The lap
will.
band?
Yeah, the lap band is something that you can go in and say, I want this, sort of like a boob job or like whatever. You can go in and say, I want this done. Here's this amount of money. And they just do it without pre stuff. Like, I think that you got very valuable sort of resources in the beginning. Lap band sort of something people just get. And then that can kind of reverse itself if you
Yes.
end up stretching your stomach. But what happens to somebody who got what you got and then can't, is still doing improper stuff, but it's not reversible? Do they burst their stomach?
They can.
Do they?
Your stitches, your staples can burst. You can end up with esophagus problems. You can end up with very bad GERD, which is like you keep burping back what you're eating because it can't go down. I also heard of a lot of people that ended up with bowels
Like
ripping
perforation,
open
yeah,
and
right.
perforations of the bowel because they refuse to follow the new regime. You have to get it in your head that no, you can't have carbonated meals or drinks. You cannot have a lot of high sugar content. You can't have there's a lot of things you have to sign off on.
Yeah.
It's not going to be part of your life anymore.
But mentally, some people
And
succeed and others
mentally,
don't.
some do. Some have to have good moral support. They have to have great family support. But they also, what I saw were a lot of the people who refused to change how they
Habits
ate
and
their
stuff.
habits maybe lost 60 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them started slowly putting it back on. Some just stayed at 60 pounds and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that really were serious and really took a whole look at their lives and why they ate and how they ate,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of it's why you eat. They tended to lose a lot more
Be
weight.
more successful.
But I don't know what all the statistics are because they're still learning so much about
Because
this.
it's not that old.
No, and
Especially what they provide now. Like, I know there's a family friend of ours who had this before, it was more of like, oh, that seems like a bit of an emergency thing we need to do because you're a bit out of control. And this friend went in, got it done, and there was very little prep, very little follow up, and a lot of kind of stumbling and making mistakes and
yep.
pain, physical pain because of it, and
Mm-hmm.
different things that way. So I think that it seems that numbers aren't technically there because there
Right.
might not be enough. Like, you're sort of a part of that, I think, experiment.
Mm-hmm. It is. It is an experiment, and you can read a lot on the internet. The American information is a lot different than the Canadian
Oh, why is that?
because the American surgeries are not covered.
Right.
You have to pay
Well, of
for
course.
them. So the what I understand, the amount of pre-coaching and
Mm-hmm.
qualification, anybody can buy the surgery.
Right.
In Canada, it's different, and
Probably for the best.
it's way better. And like I said, the follow-up as well. Now, we'll talk about the follow-up in a minute,
Mm-hmm.
but the follow-up and knowing you weren't alone, like that our family friend of ours came home from the surgery, had instructions for what to do with her incisions, but no instructions on what to do about her diet and how she was going to feel, for the first 6 weeks, she had to do this type of, milkshakes and protein bars and all this stuff so her stomach and her surgery staples would heal.
Right.
Like there's so many things that they didn't know 20
Mm-hmm.
years ago that she had to endure, and
Yeah.
she ended up in a lot of trouble
A lot of
at
pain,
one point,
yeah.
and pain and agony where we were told very, very openly what we were going to go through the 6 months
Yeah.
after surgery.
So go through a little bit of the things you can't have.
Okay. A lot of people are different, but in general, you can't have carbonated drinks.
And
You
why
can't-
is that?
Well, because your
Like a
stomach is so
burping or
small
something, or?
that it'll fill with the carbonation.
Oh, the gas. Okay.
And then you're not going to get the right amount of volume in your stomach, protein, vitamins, fruit,
Because there's
vegetables,
just gas there.
because it's now filled with gas. And then you end up in so much pain because that gas has to pass. And everybody passes at different stages. So it gets very difficult. You can't have a lot of high sugar, like chocolate bars, things
But
with
you eat a lot of sugar, so what's
I
that like?
do.
Yeah.
I
What's that
do.
like for you if you're not really supposed to have that, but you seem to have quite
I,
a bit of
s-
sugar?
I seem to have a lot more sugar lately, and I think that has to do with the fact that I am now I've been now diagnosed as bipolar, and I do take medication for it,
Hmm.
and I think the medication does tend to make you crave sugar more,
Interesting.
and I do um, on the weekends allow myself to have more sugar than I normally do
Oh,
during
and
the
I guess
week.
that's where I see you most,
And
so maybe
because we
that's what
see
it
each
is.
other on the weekends, it's like, wow,
Baking and
mom's
things.
having a, a piece of apple pie, which is usually very small,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have it. Where 3 years
Throughout the
ago I
weeks.
wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
I was totally no, 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 I'm not going to have it. But after going through some of
You still
my
have to let yourself
issues,
indulge too,
right,
right? You can't just be like, because the whole time it's like moderation,
right,
even moderation.
all
Everything
week,
in moderation, even moderation. That's the
all
saying.
week I'm like, exactly, yes, thank you, Julia Child.
Is that who said it?
Yes, yes.
Oh, add some butter.
Yes, bunta and moderation. So, yeah, you see me more on the weekends, so you tend to see me having
Oh,
that
so
little
you're not
piece of
always like
pie,
this.
or I go, no, it's okay, I'll have some.
Okay, okay.
But in the past or during the week, I usually am very regimented,
Oh, okay.
and on the weekends, I
Let
don't tend to
yourself go a
be.
little bit.
And and I play with a 5 pound range where
Oh,
sometimes I'm a
really?
bit 5 pounds over. And then
Under.
if I watch myself and I know, and I don't put the sugar into my body and the salt, I can drop 5 pounds in,
Like a day.
very little time.
Right.
But I have to still be careful.
And so there's other things too, like alcohol. They don't recommend you have
No.
it because you absorb it super fast. Is that why?
Yes, you're absorbed. That's the other thing. When they take the small intestine away, the amount of small intestine they take affects your absorption rate. So when you drink alcohol, the alcohol gets into your system way faster. You also digest way faster. So within 2 hours after I eat, I am hungry again.
Right. Yeah. You have to eat
So
more
I eat
frequently.
every 2.5 to 3 hours like a baby because my body gets rid
Everything
of
quicker.
everything quite quickly. So you have to, because of that, you have to have high protein. You have to try and get your vitamins in. I can't have things like um, bacon. I can't have a
That's
lot of
also
pork.
gallbladder
Yeah,
stuff, right?
I
Like
don't have a
don't
gallbladder.
have a gallbladder, so
Yeah.
pork is not really the
No,
greasiness.
no. And anything really greasy is very hard on you.
So you're kind of just eating how you're supposed to eat.
Right?
Is what you're saying is
Right.
sort of like how everybody should be eating.
Exactly. And, you go through cravings too. You crave certain
Yeah.
foods and,
Well, you are still human.
you're human and you do have a definitely different relationship with food, but you also still cannot forget that you have to chew. You have to
Because you
eat the
like pay
right
for it
things.
later, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So, how did you find that your body changed physically?
Oh, well, I
What did you lose, for example, to begin?
um at the beginning, I think I lost about 150 pounds.
But you lost some before you even had the surgery, right?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of pre-nutritional stuff like, what was it
Well,
again?
for 3 weeks, I had to
Before.
drink, before the surgery, I was put on a 3 week diet of, they're a type of high protein milkshakes. And I can't for the life of me remember the name of them, but Oprah was on them for a while. She lost 40 pounds. So I lost about 35 pounds before the surgery because all I could have were these shakes. And these shakes, what they did was they reduced the amount of fat around your liver so they could get to your stomach faster for the surgery. So everybody had to go, before you have your surgery, everybody had to go 3 to 6 weeks on those shakes, depending on how much you were overweight. So I lost 35 pounds before the surgery, and then total in weight loss within 18 months after the surgery, I lost 170 pounds. So I started at 350, and I'm now 180 to 185, depending on how much I behave and how much I don't behave.
How much fun you're having.
And how much fun I'm having. Also on exercise, and that's the other thing I said to Liz. I've never, other than when I used to play sports and stuff like that, I never really got into daily exercising. I walk about 3 to 4 miles a day, though. And I try to walk, and I was cycling for a while, but we know what that caused. But so I don't do a ton of exercising, and I know that it probably would have helped because I have a lot of like saggy extra skin around my
but
stomach.
not that much,
No,
really.
not
I mean,
really.
when we kind of considered, I mean, when we talked about this in the beginning, I think that probably everybody in the family just probably would have expected that it would have been a lot more. I think you even did.
I did, because I saw pictures of people.
But somehow you have some weird...
I have some strange
Russian
elasticity to my skin, and especially in the,
it's really
in the
not
stomach
bad,
area.
yeah.
But you know,
Underarm.
the under your arm skin is pretty bad, and you know your breasts end up dropping really extreme. And to tell you the truth, I don't believe in plastic surgery really that much.
But you did look
because
into it, didn't you?
I did look into it, and I did find out how much it was, and I think I could spend that much money going to Paris rather than getting a boob job. So, and I also saw photographs. I went to a seminar that the bariatric group did on plastic
Skin,
surgery
yeah.
and what to do with your excess skin. And I found that the before and after pictures, I didn't think they were that fantastic, because you end up with extreme scars. You end up with some issues afterwards.
Yeah,
Like,
sometimes
it doesn't
it's
always
not-
work.
no.
It doesn't always give you what results you want. And you have to go through more surgery, which I think
You just
is
wanted to
hard on your
avoid,
body.
probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, after having knee surgery, gallbladder, you know, ovarianectomy, like stuff
Yeah.
like that, I didn't want to go through any more surgery, because there's a lot of
Taxing, I guess.
yeah, and there's always the risks that you have to face with any type of surgery. So the
Yeah.
older you get, the harder it's going to be.
Do you think that if your situation was slightly different, though, that like if you had really bad skin on your stomach, or
Yeah.
or really bad, like, I mean, I think it looks pretty, I think you look great. I
Oh,
think you look
yeah,
wonderful.
thank you.
But I think that I just wonder sometimes if it was much worse, would you have actually been like, well, fuck this?
Well, maybe. I think I would have. You know what? I think it would have been dependent on how much the excess skin was bothering me.
Yeah.
And I know that some people, and I did see some people who end up with this double apron where their skin
Like a flap, yeah.
it flaps down and it gets infected and it gets all disgusting.
Yeah, but they'll cover that, won't they?
They will.
Yeah, because it's a hazard.
Yes,
Because you can get skin diseases and gangrene
exactly.
and stuff, yeah.
So the program does cover that if you have what they call the excess apron, but otherwise they don't. And they would never cover me, because I went to a plastic surgeon, and she goes, you know, she was even quite amazed at how the skin had come back. So I think what ends up happening is you end up finding a really good bra, and you end up finding really good Spanx. And you
Thank
just
God
say
for
to hell with it. Thank God for Spanx. And
I'm going to Paris, baby.
Under wires, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm going to Paris and having a good time, rather than worrying about, like, I'm in my 50s. I'm not, my bikini days are long gone, long
but
over.
why the hell not?
So,
You
yeah.
can still do it if you wanted.
Yeah, but
you're not
I don't
comfortable
want
with
to.
it.
I don't think I would.
You still do have a little bit of insecurity about the arms and your
Yes.
skin on your arms and stuff. Just your own personal.
Yeah, I
from what
apologize to people about it when I'm wearing
and you shouldn't.
sleeveless tops, because I think it's embarrassing.
You
for
shouldn't.
them.
I think you should just.
Well, they do look like wings, but that's okay. You know, I guess I have to deal with the flapping thing, and that's no one's ever satisfied with all of their body parts.
I guess that's
but,
true.
You know, you tend to fixate on the things that are irritating, and I think that's one of the things that always bothered me afterwards.
Right. Oh, I think it's a really interesting transformation too, to see, like, it's a little overwhelming actually to see photos of you before and after.
I know.
Just because it's really extreme of like how different it was. And it's funny because I don't really remember it. It's weird. It's like you'd only just start to remember things of how they are. It's like, this is you, and you're always you. So, because you have the same voice, you have the same mannerisms, you have the
Yeah.
same laugh, like everything's the same,
Yeah.
but it's just your body's different.
The transformation was a bit challenging at the beginning because I did rapidly lose the weight, and I didn't know I would. I didn't know I would be that successful and lose the weight that
Well, you know,
quickly.
yeah, you
You just
wouldn't.
don't know because
Just
they
sort of
don't.
like it happens and you're
Right.
there and you're like, oh, well, this is my
Yeah.
life now. Yeah.
Exactly. And they don't guarantee that you're going to lose the weight that fast. But when I would go for my, my checkups to the program, they would say I was the poster child.
Wow.
The nutritionists and the nurses and the psychologists, they were so pleased with my mental attitude and how I was focusing on it and how much weight I was losing. And I used to meet people. I work for an organization that I've worked for at this point for 38 years, and I would go to events and meet people, and they would be almost embarrassed to ask me how I lost so much weight because they thought I had cancer or they thought I was sick in
Right.
some way. So I used to find, and I said this at one of the group therapies, I used to feel like I was walking into a room with a mask on.
So you
And
felt
nobody
very
would
different.
recognize me because I had some bizarre mask on.
But you had that. People actually didn't notice you, obviously.
They didn't even know who I was.
Even after 30 years of friendship,
Right,
or
right.
they'd walk
And
right past you.
they'd walk right past me because I didn't advertise it a lot to my friends. I didn't know what to do or tell them.
Yeah, it's like, hey guys, I'm gonna lose half my body weight. Come
Right.
watch. Like,
Or
it's a
maybe-
bit weird. Or I don't.
Maybe I
Yeah.
am, maybe I'm not. And they would see me and say, "Oh my God, what happened?"
Oh yeah, that's a bit awkward.
And it was a bit awkward. But the other thing too was that one of the wise women that was in my therapy group, she says, "Well, look at it another way. Maybe you have to look at it as you had a mask on your whole life, and now the mask is gone.
Oh, so you're sort of reversing it.
So this is who
It's
you
probably the
really
healthiest way to
are."
look at
And
it. Yeah.
exactly. And that made me step back and think, oh, yeah, maybe that's how I should approach it.
But it's still probably, that is a great way to approach it. But I mean, the reality is that you do go to work at a certain place where people are vocal about it or curious or
Yes.
strangers,
Yep.
you might see a photo and say, there's like, border people who go, this isn't, you on your license photo. Like,
Oh, yeah,
can you
that
please,
happened.
like you even like tell that story is quite interesting about having to get your doctor to write a note.
Oh, I was going across the border to pick up a friend at the Buffalo airport, and I realized as I was driving, I looked at my passport, and my passport picture and my current self just did not match. And just before I left, I got the doctor to write me a note saying that I had gone through bariatric surgery. So when I got to the border, the fellow looked at my face. He asked me to take my glasses off. He asked me then for my driver's license, which looked just like my passport photo, and he said, "Okay, tell me what you did." And I said, "I had bariatric surgery." And he said, "Oh my God," he said, "my mom wants to do that. Tell me all about it." And meanwhile, I've got a lineup behind me at the border, and I'm like, "You really want to know about it?" He goes, "Yeah," he says, "because you look fantastic." And I went, "Well, thanks very much, but like you're at work." And he said, "No, just tell me what the risks were." So I explained a little bit to him. And I told him how much I lost and, the meds I'm not on anymore. And he just was very thrilled about that. And he let me go through.
That's awesome.
And on the way back, the lady looked at the
Didn't
Canadian
notice?
one, looked at my passport, looked at me and went, "Okay, you can go."
Yeah, so it just depends.
So it depends on the person and how much they're curious about how you look. But yeah, that's when it really kind of hit home to me that I, changed so much that in many ways I'm still the same person inside, but it's just the covering that's different. I really didn't change that much.
So, what are the differences now that you kind of notice? I know in private you've told me before of how it was as a larger person to a drastic change now that, you feel you're not looking for this attention, but you might get it from people hitting on you. Like, what's that like?
Well, it's kind of odd. I found that people, especially women that I kind of knew not well or at work or I met through different organizations, were very almost rude in asking me, "How did you lose so much weight?" And
Like a snide
what's
thing
your
almost.
what's your secret? well, and stuff like that. And at the beginning, I just said, I would get almost defensive, and I would kind of say, well, I just changed my eating habits, and I wouldn't tell them why. And then I thought, you know what? I don't know why I'm hiding this. I should really tell people the truth, because I should be proud of what I've done and proud of the help I got. And I should tell people about how they could lose weight this way, because
Right.
I did have a lot of friends and people asking me that were very grossly overweight. So I started being an advocate for the program. And I found that people were very respectful, especially women, when I told them the truth. But men were afraid to ask me. And what I found was that as I got thinner, I would get doors open for me. I would get men asking, like when I had my laptop in my case, I would be carrying them up the stairs, and I'd actually have men stop me and ask if they could carry my case for me.
Do you mean after
After the
being
surgery.
thinner?
Yes.
But like if you're in the same situation, you've gone basically the same path.
Nobody ever offered
no one
when
ever
I was
did it
overweight
before.
to carry anything for me.
Ugh.
And how they'll step out of the way and let me go first, kind of thing. Or men just start talking to me that would never ever say
Or even
2
younger
words to
men
me.
hitting on you, like
younger
overtly,
men.
actually.
Oh my God, we were at
'Cause
a
you're-
party one night, and I swear to God, I think this kid must have been 20, 21. And your dad was even there, and he kept asking me out. And it was,
Really awkward.
I thought that Roger gave him money to just to
as a
bug
joke.
me, to pester me. And I kept saying, tell Roger to bite me, stuff like that. And he
And
kept
he's
saying, I don't know what you're
persistent.
talking about. No, he was drinking heavily, but I had no idea what to do. I just thought it was a joke being
Because you're
played
not
on
used
me.
to looking, or you're not used to feeling like a sexual object.
No, absolutely not. And I also feel too sometimes when I'm in meetings with men that didn't even know me before, because I'm in a new group now and I'm
Right.
meeting a lot of different people, that they almost get uncomfortable around me, and they won't keep eye contact with me or
Oh.
something, because I don't know, I make them uncomfortable for some reason, and I think it has that male
'cause you're a
female
hot
thing,
mama.
maybe. I don't know. It's just awkward. And
So do you almost
Yeah.
wish, because that attention isn't really your thing? I don't think you ever did any of this or do anything
No.
to be like, oh, look at me. I don't think
Never.
you're parading yourself around. But do you almost wish that certain things, you could have a little bit of that, I don't want to say invisibility because that's really sad, but I mean, certain where you kind of fly under the radar,
anonymous.
feeling
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
you did before.
Yeah,
And then now,
Sometimes I'm not really comfortable with the attention, and I'm not comfortable with the male attitude. I think in some ways it makes me embarrassed for men
oh,
because of how they act towards me, and how
especially knowing the
I was-
difference of
yeah.
the two different, you're like,
Yeah.
wow, you really suck.
Yeah.
Because you behave this way and then
Yeah.
you didn't behave the same way.
Exactly.
Right.
And, we have friends that, when they see me, they go, wow, you're really keeping the weight off. We're really proud of you. Well, that's great. But then some go, oh, you really look good. Well, that's not, looking good wasn't the aim. The point was to keep the weight off.
But that's
and
funny.
be
I think
healthier.
what you're seeing actually is that person's sort of perception of why people do things.
Right.
So you're probably hearing somebody say, well, you look really good, or you fit into this stuff now, or you're fashionable, whatever
Yeah.
it ends up being. I think it probably actually you'd find it's that person who really has that prerogative to be like, that's why they would lose weight, or that's why they really think people would. But you're
Yes.
like, that's not my, so I get how that could be probably frustrating, because you're like, I wanted my health to be better.
Right.
And I wanted to be able to feel not
Like I'm off 5
you know?
medications.
Yeah. That's why,
I don't have to sleep with a CPAP machine making all kinds of noise and waking people up in the house.
Yeah.
Your life changes to the point where you're thinking about being healthy for the next 25 years rather than the next 5 years.
Right.
Because
your life would have been shorter.
Right.
Just, speaking bluntly.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the medications are not always going to help you.
No.
Yeah.
At
some point they stop working, or you just, you're just not doing that well.
Right. So what is there certain things that are coming up now that you've heard of, or I know that you just mentioned that you have recently been diagnosed with bipolar
Yeah.
2.
Yes, it's bipolar 2. There's 3 levels of bipolar. There's 1, 2, 3. And number 1 is where I think in the past they used to call it manic depression, where you would be on a teeter-totter. You'd be very depressed and then very happy and then very depressed and very happy. And,
Manic and low, mania.
Where bipolar 2 is where you tend to get low more than you get high. And when your lows are really low, you get somewhat, you can get very suicidal. And you don't tend to have highs, but when you do have your highs, you stay there for very long periods. And then bipolar 3 is that you're very high all the time and you don't hit the lows that often, but when you hit the lows, like they're really, really extreme.
Low, yeah.
So I do know that bipolar illness has been diagnosed a lot more in post-bariatric surgery patients that were experiencing some type of depression before their surgery, either admittingly or not admittingly, because I was not admitting it.
Yeah.
And the manifestation is as you lose the weight, your whole physiology changes as well as your brain chemistry. And bipolar illness is a brain imbalance. It's an imbalance in your brain. So there has been, and they don't have enough studies yet to prove it, but they do see a higher propensity for people to have bipolar illness after the surgery.
And so do you yourself truly believe, like even in hindsight being like, maybe, there's certain mental illness that runs in our family.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
do you think that this was the catalyst for it? Like, do you think, oh yeah, you know what? This is definitely what triggered my bipolar.
No, you know what?
Oh.
I do in a way, but I don't regret it.
That was my next question. You don't regret having the surgery?
No.
In hindsight,
I'd have it done again. If knowing what I know. However, I think I would have been more honest in my analysis.
Because maybe you would have been like taken care of earlier. So there's an honesty thing in there too. Like other people would lie about their habits, but.
And I did lie because I thought if I told them I felt depressed most of the time, that they wouldn't give me the surgery. But if I told them,
maybe they would have
honestly,
helped you out more.
I maybe could have been medicated earlier. Or I could have been
prepared
treated
in a different
earlier,
way.
prepared in a different way. So I wouldn't have fallen as deep as I did.
Okay.
So, and I may have been more aware of my ups and downs
right.
After the surgery.
As opposed to being like, well, this all sucks and this is shitty and this is how it is. You would have been like, oh, something's up, or this is a key to this other issue.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what are things that you now, like pleasures that you'd take as a person who's lost that weight, and now that you maybe are physically able, or, there's things that you were like small joys or things that you're like, I ride a bike now. Like, this is great.
I rode the bike for quite a while until I got hit by a car, but that's another story. But
like, are there things like that you
Oh my God! I get off the GO train and I go up the stairs and I get up to the top of the stairs and I get to the car and I go, wow, I ran up those stairs and I didn't even realize it. Like I do things.
Well, you do that. Remember the bed that I did an inflatable, what's it called? A blow up mattress in my apartment. And I remember standing there with you. It was like months after your surgery, and you were lived close. I lived close to a hospital at that time. You were going to for the meetings,
right? And
you slept over the one night, and I blew up the mattress. You came home from work and went, I don't know if I can lay down on that. And I'm like, well, why? Well, I don't know if I can get up. And I thought, what the fuck are you talking about? And then you went, oh, and you literally shook your head and went, so just lay down and see if you could do it. I thought maybe you were thinking about your knees or your back or one of the other issues you might have, like physically, because of other things like deteriorating discs and stuff. But you lay down, then you got up and went, oh shit, I can get up. Because I guess it's these little things you're discovering that you would just avoid as somebody who felt, unable physically.
Oh, totally. And just the other day when I was up here, I was laying on the lounger at the cottage and I thought, oh, I've got to go get up and go to the bathroom. And I just kind of swung my legs over and I stood straight up and I went.
So you still surprised yourself?
wow, I totally forgot I could do that.
Right.
So I used to, and there's things I had to do, prepare for. Like if I was going to go grocery shopping, I would really have to emotionally get into it because just walking around the grocery store would tire the hell out of me.
Wow, really?
And
I would
now
have
I
never known
finished
that.
grocery shopping and I'm kind of like, oh, I'm feeling pretty good. I think I'll dash to the car with the groceries in the thing. And then getting home, when I used to carry groceries up the stairs, oh my God, it was just
So is
hell.
it mostly physical stuff that
It's a
you realize
lot
now?
of physical stuff. It's carrying dishes to
Mm.
this, just the laundry up and down the stairs, stuff like that you just take for granted,
Yeah.
that it's going to take you a while to get up the stairs, or it's going to take you a while to do something physically that you can do quite easily now.
What do you think about mentally? Because I think that you may be like, would you say that the negativities you felt about your body before the surgery have been replaced by negativities that sort of seep in or have seeped in because of your mental illness with bipolar? Do you know what I mean? Like, are you mentally better? Do you feel like you're mentally better,
I
like
think
equally?
I think I am, now that I've got the bipolar under control, because
Right.
I had to go through 3 medication changes before I got to the point. And you've been through it all with me, Lizzie, so it was a
Yeah,
long
it's a pretty
journey.
intense thing.
And then I ended up a year ago with the meds again not working, and I ended up in the psych ward in the Brampton Hospital. So, and thank you for taking me.
No
And
problem.
I think I'm, you know what? No matter what, I am 150% more aware of myself now,
Wow.
and you know, thinking about why I do things and why I don't do things. I think I'm more in the moment, and I want to be more in the moment.
Yeah, like you're working on that and
Yeah,
working
and
on.
it's always going to be a work in progress. I think
Well, you're no
always
stranger to work, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, not work. I mean, like hard work and personal development and stuff.
Right.
I always see that from you.
And I'm not as afraid, like now that I've let music become my my big
Like a solace.
solace, that
Outlet.
I love. You told me a year ago that I have to do the things I love to do. And what do I love to do? And it has always been that I love to sing and play my guitar. And you said, well, then take it to the next level. You have the ability to do that, Mom. And I think I have.
Do you think that you have definitely maybe performing at all these places? But do you also think too that maybe I think we might have talked about this before, but for the people, were you less like used to still play in like family groups and like in front of Dad because that's where you and Dad met playing in a band together? But like, did you like not necessarily want to put yourself out there because you felt awkward about being large?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I always thought
Like
I'm
you
a
wouldn't have
backup
done
singer.
you wouldn't have done what
No,
you do
never,
now. No.
ever, ever.
Which is perform in front of a lot of people.
Never, ever, ever. And you know what? That's the other thing. I find that this whole thing, there's a lot more male performers in the 2 groups that I'm in, and they do treat me differently. Absolutely differently. They accept me way more because of my size.
So you do feel that the women are sort of a bit snarky to you or no? Or
Yeah,
that's hard to tell because
it's
I think there's a
hard.
talent thing. So people get jealous or maybe they're trying to like compete against each other even in this
Until they get to know me, yeah.
kind of place.
I think they're a little overwhelmed sometimes because I do have such a large voice and I have control, and I'm practiced.
Yeah. But then again, it's not totally true that you would have hidden away because it's not like you still, I think that like it's a bit of, you were 3/4 of the way there when you were like a bigger person feeling probably awkward about performing. But, it's always admirable that it didn't stop you from adding into like, family functions or friends coming over and singing or like doing Christmas carols. And it never stopped you from like raising money for Chum Children's Wish and all this stuff that you did at, you still were like, oh, I'm the choir master, head of the game and organizing these things. But so you always did still, I don't think when I think of you as a bigger person, I don't think I ever remember you being like a cowardly hiding person of like, I don't want anyone to see me. I mean, you might have felt that way, but
Right.
like, I don't think you you obviously pushed away some opportunities because you would have probably been performing and doing all this stuff, but
Right.
this seems to have opened up a little bit more of like
It's
a
confidence.
common ground for your confidence.
Yeah, and it's confidence, and it's also, it's not just your relationship with food, it's your body image.
Right.
And I was in a couple of studies through the bariatric group about body image, and
What was
I know
that
I'm
like?
not alone. It's, you know what, it was a lot of interviews talking about yourself, where you've come from, asking, you know, what you think of your body now, why you did the surgery, you know, same kind of like a lot of the same questions you're asking me here.
Oh, okay.
You know, would you do it again? What are the, you know, the issues? You know, how you feel people treat you
Yeah.
now, what the world's view on age and size are, and how much large people, even though they're large, they're invisible in many ways. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I felt. Totally invisible, except when there were thin women around, you were even more invisible.
But invisible, but then you might seem that you feel like you're invisible, but did you feel super awkward as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And especially too, because you said, oh, I've been overweight most of my life. I think that's a bit misconstrued too, because you like were, you know, struggled with some eating disorders early in life and stuff. And I think that you were like model, always very good looking, obviously.
Oh, geez, I don't know about that.
No, but I think you're
But
very good looking. And then you,
I was always a large. I was 6 feet.
well, you're tall, like you're
6'1".
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I went through stages where I was quite large. Even as a child, everybody used to call me chubby, chubby wubby, and because my sister was like a
I don't mean to.
scarecrow.
I don't mean to laugh. It's just
Yeah.
chubby kids are cute to me,
Yeah,
so I don't
know,
think of it as like a negative thing.
But I was very athletic. I was always running around. I never stopped.
Yeah.
I think I
You're
was a little
athletic. I don't think that
I think I was a little hyperactive.
probably, but I didn't ever see photos of you where you're like or an obese
Oh no,
child.
I wasn't obese. I was just a big girl, and
But you were tall, like early on.
Yeah.
So when
And,
did your eating disorder kind of
well
crop up?
when I was around 19, I ended up with anorexia because I had really, you know, I left home when I was 17. I was hanging out with girls who were a lot thinner than me. I lived with a bunch of girls who were very aware of how they looked and stuff, and I never really cared that much about it.
And you always felt awkward because of your height, and you were
My
bullied
height.
because of your height.
Yes.
So you kind of, I think, would have always just felt weird.
I just felt awkward, so I just stopped eating. And I, at that point, I had broken up with your dad too. So I just stopped eating, and I just started.
Was that
getting
from
very
where you
weird.
stopped eating from depression from breaking up with him?
No.
Do you think? Oh,
No. I just wanted to be somebody I wasn't.
oh, you're just. But
I lost
was
my
that
identity. I lost who I was. I didn't
because of the
know.
breakup?
No, I think just because I don't know. I have no idea why.
But maybe just a competition thing of wanting to be
Maybe.
like a role with the ladies.
And I wasn't happy with how I looked.
Right. So you had a bit of a dysmorphia thing going on, right?
Yeah,
Where you thought you were larger than you were.
absolutely.
Because you look at pictures now and you'll be like, I thought I was huge here.
Yeah.
And we're like, what the hell? Like,
yeah.
Mom, you're really like
Absolutely.
rake thin here.
Yeah. And
So-
then I got very sick, and then I gained a lot of weight.
Sick how? Like, what were you sick
I
with?
was I couldn't feel the top of my head or my fingertips or my feet. And the doctor told me, I went to see the doctor, and he said if I didn't start to eat, he would put me in the hospital. So
Oh, well.
I knew that I had to do something, and so I ended up going the other way, and I gained too much weight.
So, yeah, it's interesting. Nutrition was such not a thing back when you were a teenager.
The 70s,
yeah.
right?
Because, nowadays they'd put you in a program to teach you about nutrition. It's
Right.
interesting though, because if you think about that, that's a relationship with food, a negative thing.
Yeah.
And it's an extreme relationship with food.
Right.
Or like it's a relationship with food with not having food. But then it's
Exactly.
interesting that like that doctor would have threatened you, but that I really truly think that if it was a program a wonderful thing that's offered probably now, or like you had more information, you probably would never have ended up needing a weight loss surgery.
No.
Do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's interesting to look back at. I never thought of that actually as like a piece to the puzzle. I was just like, yeah, you should see, she's had problems with the food before.
Yeah, but it was also, this was around the time all the glossy magazines came out and the skinny girls were on the front. And
Right.
this is after the hippie movement, right?
Yeah.
So now, the things that society liked were skinny women with, Twiggies and, things like
Right.
that.
Right.
And it was like you were trying to live up to an image that you never could. Not in all, there's
Because
no way.
they, in reality, were starving themselves too. I
Right.
mean,
They were
for
totally
for that
starving
photo
themselves.
shoot. And
You
they were
you
on
look
cocaine.
at Bo Derek, and she was chewing ice all day.
Jesus.
So she wouldn't have to eat.
Right.
Like there was, and you hear, Jane Fonda was starving
Oh, yeah.
herself. Like
So what was
so-
your flip back from that? You gained a lot of weight, you
Yeah,
said?
I gained a lot of weight, and then I realized I gained way too much weight, so I went back to playing basketball, and I started doing stuff.
So there was periods of like doing it in a healthy way.
Yeah, and then I had
And children.
hormone imbalance, so I
Yeah.
had to start taking hormones, and that put weight on me.
Yeah.
And then I got pregnant, and I ended up with more weight on me. And then
Other
once you have kids and
pregnancies
stuff, and then I had another pregnancy, and then I lost the baby, and then I had another pregnancy.
Yeah, so it's just a lot.
So it was, my body was never able to kind of jump back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't jump back.
Yeah.
So, and then once you start having children, you don't think about yourself and your own nutrition. You want to feed your kids right.
Right.
And you
But also building on top of issues that were unresolved, really. Because it sounds like that yo-yo is an unresolved thing, right? Yeah.
exactly.
So it just sort of snowballed into an issue.
Yeah, and then it was diet pills, and then it was something else. And
Right.
then it was Jenny Craig, and then it was Weight Watchers, and like.
I remember you
went
guys
through
did the
everything.
South Beach diet.
South Beach.
And Dad lost all the weight.
Oh, yeah.
Men.
Bruce lost all the weight.
All the
I
weight.
lost 5 pounds. So anyway, yeah. So now I'm out here where I am now. I still have, a weird relationship with food. I don't drink anymore. I
Yeah.
don't drink alcohol. I try to avoid sugar during the week. I try to eat right. I try to exercise more. It's always going to be a journey, though.
Yeah.
I really think it's going to be a work in progress my whole life.
Yeah, and I think that I see sometimes you do stuff where like you'll be really excited to eat something that we've made. Like it'll be like, this is, everybody's into it. Like we all love cooking. Like
Yeah.
Richard and I cook, and my boyfriend and I cook for you guys. And,
Yeah.
family dinner has always been a big thing, regardless
Always.
of how busy people are, who was like busy doing this or not home or whatever. Like whoever was there, you come together for it. And it's always, 9 out of 10 times it's in the kitchen, and it's a family thing, and it's something you and Dad always valued. So I have seen you get a little bit excited and then eat too fast.
Yep.
And I do think sometimes I'm like, oh, it's a fucking shame, because like, some of us do take that, probably not healthy pleasure and just being like eating as much as we want, as fast as we want. And then you can't do that.
No.
And that's sort of a shitty thing, but I don't know. That brings us to a weighing of the pros and cons of like,
Right.
so what do you feel? I know that you said you would do it, but like there's the pros and the cons.
I'm healthier now.
So
And
there's-
I don't take meds that I had to take. I had no choice. So I
Right.
know I'm much, much healthier now. And emotionally, I'm getting there too. It's, emotionally,
Process.
I think it's a process. And I think emotionally is something you struggle with your whole life. I look at, family issues. I look at hereditary issues. And
'Cause
I
that's a
think
huge piece of it, too.
mental illness has been something everybody has shoveled under the bed.
Yeah.
And we now have to totally change that.
It has to
for
be a discussion.
Our children and our children's children.
Yeah.
And we can't hide it anymore.
No.
That's one thing that
You're an advocate for now
I'm
too.
going to be a lot more vocal about going forward too. I have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I have to find voice there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's gone on too long.
But that's good that you've been through a lot, so your strength hopefully translates, and it's about helping people, and
Right.
you're very good at your recording of things, and you're that's why I think I'd attribute a lot of your success in these ways to your organization, because you keep everything very tight and I think together, so it's easy for
More or
you
less,
to
yeah.
more or less. But I mean, like your ability to track things and be able to know what you were on and all
Yep.
this stuff. I think that
Yeah.
your wealth of knowledge and resource that way. So it's good to know.
And you know what? I really did want to become a coach for the bariatric program.
Yeah.
However, the one criticism I would have about the program was that So for the first three, I guess the first 5 or 6 visits, you have to see a psychiatrist, you have to see a nutritionist, a nurse, practitioner, and sometimes a surgeon, depending on the stages you were at. And I had to, instead of having one appointment where I saw 4 of them, I had to have 4 appointments. And I found that very difficult to coordinate because they were during the day, they were doing work.
Yeah.
And I just found that I would have to miss certain ones because I couldn't be away from work that amount of time, even though they supported me. There were times I just could not afford to have that much time off. So I stopped going. And for the last year and a half, I haven't gone because I would definitely go to my nutrition ones because I knew they were the most important.
Yeah.
And I did join a couple of studies.
But you also do you have your own psychologist and stuff like that you go to keep healthy mentally. So, I mean, technically,
I see a psychiatrist once a month now.
You're still doing...
I still do that.
Your maintenance.
Yeah. So at least I have that help. And I was going to see a psychologist every so many weeks too, on and off. So, yeah, I do have that support group. Mm-hmm. But I was a bit disappointed in the follow-up program, and that was one big criticism. And I've written them emails telling them that I think they need to kind of structure it differently.
Right.
And I think they are now. But I do want to get back to potentially being a coach.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think it would help. Because I did have one of my own. I had a coach. So.
Yeah. Well, I think you did a great job, and I admire all of your...
Thank you, Liz.
Journeys
and
that you do.
And I really appreciate you talking to me about this and feeling that it's important to spread the word.
Yeah.
And to have other people hear about it, because I think there were definitely some people, especially people I knew that were in the medical field, who were almost a little annoyed at me for going through with the surgery.
Really?
I did find that, especially... I don't know. Some people kind of acted like, well, you're looking for the easy fix.
Oh, God.
And
they only knew.
I didn't know what to say to that because it's not an easy fix.
No, it's a very
long journey. And it happened to work for me. I know people it didn't work for, or barely worked for. So it's not the magic bullet. It is what you make it, and you have to work just as hard to make that work as you would anything else.
Yeah, it's hard work regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
So thank you, Liz.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you giving me the platform to do this.
Of course. I love you.
I love you more.
That's it for this week. I'll be posting episodes from here on every week, and with some luck, I'll get a good rhythm going and maybe post even more. I want to thank Will Conlon, who has his very own podcast called Doing It with Will Conlon. It's a lot of fun. You should check it out. You can find it on iTunes. And to Davy Jones for our opening theme music, which is awesome, and the Young Novelists from Toronto for our outro theme music. You guys rock. You can find us on iTunes by searching Faking It Podcast, on our website at www.fakingitpodcast.com, where you will also find all of our episodes, bios, and show notes, and on Twitter at Faking It Podcast. Subscribe, share, and stay loyal. Until next time.